Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us all here today. Today's Shir should be Le'ilu Nishmas, our dear friend Menachem ben Yisrael Yaakov, as well as my dear aunt Rivka Bas Gavril Tzvi, and as well as Le'ilu Nishmas Dovr's grandfather Reb Shmuel ben Yosef Dov HaKohen Zaidi, and as well as the Refuah Shalema Bekarov Meshalom ben Sarah Miriam Bas Sarah, and also this young boy, Yair Yoshia ben Chaya Etra, to have a refuah shlema and a speedy recovery. Today, we are on page 92 in the art scroll for those who are following along. And today, we are discussing the concept of ishtadlus. Furthermore, the importance of why we need ishtadlus. If God has put us on this world, and He needs us over here, or He doesn't need us, or whatever that purpose is, why does He make us work for our food? It says, in contrast, if you look at an animal doesn't necessarily have to go out and work hard for their food. Although they do, they still have to hunt, they still have to go out and do stuff. There's certain levels of ishtadlus, but we seem to, in the human creation, that we seem to have a harder time, foraging for our necessities in our lives. And so, what is the concept, and why did Hashem create the world that we need to have this? And so Rav Av explains why Hashem made man engage in ishtadlus in order to obtain his basic needs instead of making them effortlessly available to him. So he says like this: the reason that Hashem made it necessary for man to seek and engage in various means in order to obtain his livelihood, also other things, financial well-being is one thing, but we also have to do ishtadlus to find a wife. We need to do ishtadlus to be in other relationships. We need to do ishtadlus for almost anything in our lives. It requires a certain degree of effort. It says, l'shnei pa'anim. These things are for two reasons that Hashem created the concept of ishtadlus. The first reason that He gives is to test one's commitment to Hashem's service. Now, you're going to see over here in a second, it says in Shaar Habitachon. So Shaar Habitachon is a whole sefer with 10 different gates of different things. And in Shaar Habitachon, in the work that we do for Hashem, he says over there that Chavis stated that the primary reason why man's soul is sent down from the world of souls, meaning what's the reason to begin with? Why does Hashem send a neshama down on this world? He says it's because Hashem needs to give the neshama an opportunity to be elevated. And neshama, and that's what we talk about, at least neshama, that's how we start our share with, the schus, the nishmas. What's the concept of that? Once a soul leaves this world, it doesn't have the ability to change statuses. It has no ability to grow, to get closer to Hashem, different levels within Olam Haba. And therefore, Hashem gives an opportunity for that neshama to get elevated. What He does is He sends it down into this world. And on this world, He puts it into a human being. And that human being has now different things that he or she can do in order to elevate their status. Now he talks about this. He says, the first reason is that since the divine wisdom dictated that Hashem dictated that a soul, each individual person be tested in this world, and so that whether it will serve Hashem or rebel against Him. Hashem is testing us. He's letting us be on this world as He brings the neshama down, puts it into a human being, puts it into a body, and every time we have something come before us, it's a test from Hashem as to whether or not we'll pass that test. If we pass that test, what happens is now our neshama gains a higher and elevated status in Olam Haba, and therefore it gives an opportunity for the neshama to grow. Now, He designed a test for it that would demonstrate this. And that test involves the soul's need for things in this world and lack of things that are external to it. A soul doesn't desire worldly things. And so it has no way of being tested. And so in order for Hashem to test the soul, it needs to put it into a human form, because a human form does desire worldly things. He says, example, the soul needs things that it does not naturally possess and which it cannot generate on its own. From examples are mimachol, umishta, umalbosh, uma'an, umishgo, such as food, drink, clothing, shelter, marital relations. It must obtain these things from elsewhere. A soul can't obtain those needs, and only a human being can obtain those needs. But you need those things to be wanted so that we can get tested and elevate the neshama. And Hashem commanded the soul to go about obtaining these things through means that are available for this. Al panim yuchadim ve'itim yuduim. But only in specific ways and at particular times. In examples, ways and times prescribed by Hashem. What that means is that Hashem, what are the tests that he explains? Hashem says you need food, you need shelter, you need things in your life. Now, what is the test? You're going to go out and get it. The tests are very simple. For example, man is compelled to work his field. But if it's a Jewish person, he may not plow his field with an ox or a donkey together, right? We know we're not allowed to do that. He also may not plow his field, he may not sow his field with forbidden mixture. We know that's Klein. And he may not plow, he can't plow his field at all on Shemitah. He needs food, but may not eat or produce before taking Meiser. He's allowed to eat meat, but not every single meat, and only unless it's slaughtered in a certain way. He's allowed to eat, but he can't eat Yom Kippur. He needs to wear clothing, but they can't contain wool and linen. We know that as shatnez. He needs dwelling quarters. He needs to live somewhere, but he has to place a mezuzah on his doorpost, right? And he needs labor for his clothing, for his home. He needs to build that, to create that, but he can't do that on Shabbos and Yontif. And in order to have children, he must be engaged in marital status to get married, but not to a person that he's forbidden to be with. The point is that these are the tests. The soul needs those tests in order to get elevated. The human being provides the vessel in which the soul can get elevated by coming into this world, being faced with these challenges, these tests, I should say, and now we overcome them. Every time we overcome them, it gives our neshama the ability to gain a higher elevated status in Olam Haba. And then he says, and whatever Hashem has decreed that a person will attain of these things, will be attained and concluded through Hashem's providing him all these means needed to attain them. And whatever Hashem did not decree, he will not get. His lo yigama will not be attained. And for the means by which to attain them will be withheld from him. And I'll explain that in a minute. In the ways of a person's service to Hashem, or alternatively his violation of Hashem's will becomes clear. What he explains over there is, now Hashem tells you, okay, let's do all these things. And we know we have these little concepts. We need food, we need water. How are you going to go about doing that? You're going to have a shtadlis. You have to earn those things. You're going to go about working. That also requires a test. That also requires, are you going to do things in the halachic way? Are you going to go out and earn your livelihood in an honest living? Or are you going to go and steal? Are you going to make your money off of things that you're not allowed, in ways that Torah forbids us to do things in order to make money? And so all those different things are different tests that we are going to come across that are going to help our neshama. Again, the purposes. Our neshama comes down in this world, goes into human form, and it gives the neshama the ability now to grow, to be elevated. He says, by way to resolve and choice to engage in one means of obtaining his needs as opposed to another. His reward and punishment are thus dictated by his resolve and choice. When this person makes those choices, when he gets those tests that put in front of him on the daily basis, how he goes about doing his work, his ishtadlus, in order to achieve all those different goals that he has, by doing it the halachic way, he elevates it. And consequently, if he does it the opposite way, against halakha, the forbidden way, then his soul can be de-escalated. Even if he did not, in fact, carry out and accomplish the act that he thought to do so, on account of Hashem's having withheld him from his means to do so. What he means by this is, we're going to learn later on, and I think it's Perek Dalet, that there's 3 parts to doing an action, whether a good deed or a bad deed. So if something is a mitzvah or something that's forbidden, avera, there's 3 parts to that. There's the part that you have to plan, there's the part of the decision stage. So you say, hey, I want to go out and do this mitzvah. Okay, great. Then you have the planning stage. And I gave us an example once. I said, let's say you want to go do Bikur Cholim. So you wake up one morning and say, hey, today I want to go do the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim. Okay, great. It's a great decision. Second phase is now planning. Okay, I'm going to go down. I'm going to get into my car at 10 o'clock. I'm going to drive out to Manhattan. I'm going to go to the hospitals. And I'm going to go visit some people. I'm going to be Mekayim the mitzvah. The third part of that is that you actually get into your car, head out to the city, and then you go do your mitzvah. Now, the first two parts we call Bechira, and that's the part where we have the choice in order to do that. And that's the part that Hashem allows us our ability. But we all learn and we know that at the end of the day, carrying out the result of what our will is only up to Hashem. And therefore, we cannot accomplish something unless it's decreed by Hashem. And therefore, as long as we had the decision, in fact, the first two parts, we decide we want to do Bikur Cholim, we plan to go do Bikur Cholim, even though you set out, maybe you hit traffic, you couldn't get there, your car broke down, something else came up, you couldn't make it over there, but your choice was to go out and do it. And therefore Hashem gives you the schar for that. And so, if all man's needs were readily available for him, he would not have the opportunity to be tested in this regard. And that is the first reason why Hashem made him have to work to obtain his livelihood. And tomorrow we're going to go into the second reason. But before we conclude, I want to speak about one thing. As I mentioned yesterday, I did celebrate my 20th anniversary recently. My wife and I were sitting at dinner, and we were discussing things. And we were discussing our last 20 years together and what we've built together. And what I've learned from that is that what we were on was a journey. The point I want to make is that something very, very important that we have to learn with Bitachon, and when we get up every single day and we have this drive to do things. I read this piece about a journey. What is a journey? Life, marriage, things in what we do is a journey, not a destination. There's a reason that I want to mention that it's not a destination. We all have failures in our life, and we get disappointed, we get sad, we're upset, things are not working. What is the reason for that? Is it the reason because it really isn't working the way it's supposed to, or it's not working the way you expected it to? And that's the important part, the expectations. So we do our ishtadlus every single day, and we have certain expectations. We think that we are involved in doing certain commerce that's supposed to provide us with so much and so much. And if we don't hit those numbers, we are disappointed. Are we sad? Are we unhappy? Or is it just because of our expectations that we are at the spot where we decided that we're failing? We realize when we have children, what do you expect of your newborn child? To walk? No, you don't expect your newborn child to walk. But as your child grows older and they're 9, 10, 11 months old, you start helping them and helping them getting that muscle to start walking, to grow and become more of a child, grow into a toddler. And so to walk. But with the falling down, you're still happy about it. Why? You're happy about it because it's what you expect. When a toddler goes and drops a glass and it shatters all over the floor, you're not necessarily upset, maybe bothered for a minute, but you're not necessarily upset because you don't expect more from the toddler. But if your 20-year-old child does the same thing, your spouse does the same thing, your spouse throws something and scratches up the TV, hopefully it doesn't happen, but if someone of older that you expect them not to do something like that, and they wind up doing it, of course you're so much more upset. So the point is our expectations is what's dictating our lives. We wake up every morning and we have these expectations. It's not to say that we shouldn't have expectations in our life. My point I want to make is that with Shaar Habitachon, what we need to take into us, we have to understand what we expect and what Hashem has decreed for us are most likely two completely different things. And we have to start understanding that we can't live our lives with the expectations of what we feel we need. That we have to understand that's what Hashem decreed for us. And He's going to do the right thing for us because that we understand that's what for our benefit. So we have to let our guard down a little bit with the expectations. We have to understand that we're children and we aren't ready to walk just yet. We have to understand that what way we think about things is not necessarily what Hashem feels is best for you. In essence, many people won't tell you to do this. But we see this so many times when we see our kids that are failing in school. We say, why are the parents so upset? They say they have this great argument. And when I was a child, I was a failing student. And I was told, we expected more of you. It's not like you're a stupid child. You're a smart kid. We expect so much more of you, and that's why we're upset that you failed your test. Really? The expectation is really what's getting them upset. Now, granted, maybe some children are smarter than other children, but in reality, what failed our parents is just the expectation, the way they saw they wanted it. When we raise our children, I think that's one of the biggest things that we can have as guidebooks as to how we succeeded or failed in our lives, is we look at our children, the outcome of our children. But the outcome of our children is where we expected it. How many times have we seen, even amongst us, people, young adults, men, who have grown so much in life, yet there hasn't been the expectation of what their parents might have thought. They were raised, for instance, a Hasidish way. They may not be Hasidish today, but they are upstanding citizens. They have a shiur 3 times a day. So the shtreimel is really what's going to dictate the difference between learning Torah and not. No, we know that's not. And so we have to start understanding and let our guard down. Don't expect what you think that's going to come out of your ishtadlus. Understand that Hashem is going to be patient with you. You need to be super patient with Hashem with the outcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us all here today, and I love you all.